Hello, dear friends. Patrick here. Wednesday, April 2nd, 2025. We are quickly coming to the end of this book review, A Shattered Visage, The Real Faith of Atheism by Ravi Zacharias. We covered in the first 5 chapters 4 problems that atheism faces. So just to recap, the problem of the first cause, how does atheism explain something coming from nothing, life coming from inanimate matter, so on and so forth. So the first cause problem. The second one is the explanation for universal morality. The third one is the explanation for the meaning of life. And of course, those topics go into great detail about the aspects of universal morality and ethics and so on. And the meaning is a very in-depth chapter as well about how people search for meaning and try and explain the meaning of life in different ways, and without God they end up reaching a dead end. And then the fourth barrier that atheism faces is the concept of death. Of course, the end of life. Is that all there is? Where do we go? For the atheist, it's just going to nothingness, which is fair to say not a very satisfactory explanation, but they're more than happy to live with that. But those are the 4 topics that are covered in the first part of the book. The second part of the book is 2 chapters, chapters 6 and 7. Today I'm going to be talking about chapter 6. And the last 2 chapters, I thought there would be additional problems for atheism, but the last 2 chapters appear to be, because I'm almost finished the last chapter, appear to be shifting from the problems of atheists or the problems that atheism faces to providing a solution. And of course, Ravi Zacharias, being a Christian apologist, is going to be directing the conversation in that way. So chapter 6 is called Climbing in the Mist. And so he describes the state of the atheist, or the agnostic for that matter, as being in a mist and being unable to see clearly. And so climbing in the mist, the author wants to present this gradual progression towards theism as being a solution for all these problems, these introspective problems, and these logical problems, thought problems, and life problems, and so on and so forth. So that is the title of the chapter 6, which is what we will cover today. And I'm just going to go through it briefly for you. He quotes a lot from G.K. Chesterton and also from C.S. Lewis. And it's interesting to note that C.S. Lewis was an atheist, and so most people know C.S. Lewis as a very brilliant writer and well-educated, typical, British background kind of guy, and but a very brilliant man. But a lot of people don't realize that he wasn't brought up as a Christian. He was an ardent atheist for the first part of his life. But anyway, so it makes sense for the author to use him as a good example of climbing out of the mist, as he calls it. So he says here, on page 112, I've attempted to argue that to find their way, atheists must make sense out of a random first cause, denounce as immoral all moral denunciation, express meaningfully all meaninglessness. Am I pronouncing that right? Express meaningfully all meaninglessness, and find security in hopelessness. This is a tall order. So this is the summary. He summarizes. And then he gives a quote from C.S. Lewis when he wrote his book called Surprised by Joy. He describes his thought process when he was an atheist. He said, this is C.S. Lewis talking. He says, I had always wanted above all things not to be interfered with. And I think this is something that atheists can resonate with. They're like, don't you dare, talk to me about anything to do with the Bible, God, religion. They don't like that at all, trust me. And so the author is gently trying to push the reader in that direction as a solution, by the looks of it here. C.S. Lewis says, I always wanted above all things not to be interfered with. I had wanted to call my soul my own. I had been far more anxious to avoid suffering than to achieve delight. I had always aimed at limited liabilities. You must picture me alone in that room in Magdalen, night after night, feeling, whenever my mind lifted even for a second from my work, the steady, unrelenting approach of him whom I so earnestly desired not to meet. It's really an excellent description of his thought process. And he goes on to talk about how he in his heart rebels against God, but then finally, through despair, he ends up praying to God in his depression. Yeah, he's got some other excellent quotes in here that I'm not going to go into, but as I said, if you want to get the book and read through it, it is quite inspiring. This is a good chapter. He talks about Einstein, and he talks about Descartes, and giving life a composite unity that people strive towards. They want to have a composite unity. It's a very good topic. And so finally, he goes through and he leads up to it very gently. He says, either the philosophical followed by the biblical, or the biblical by itself, which for many is sufficient. The cogency and convincing power of the answers emerge very persuasively. So he kind of gently begins to introduce the topic of biblical concepts. And then finally, on page 120, he introduces you know who. He says, Jesus splendidly coalesced extremes in his earthly ministry by bringing balance and detail to truth. He mesmerized the lawyers, doctors, and religious teachers of his day with his authority and unassailable arguments. It was said of him that he left the scholar of the day amazed, but what was more, the common people heard him gladly. Paul the rabbi, Luke the doctor, Peter the fisherman, they all grasped reality as they had never grasped it before, when he opened the doors of their minds and hearts to the truth. He opened the doors of their minds and hearts to the truth. A very far cry from the drug-induced, what was that book called? The Doors of Perception. The Doors title their band after. Anyway, I'm getting out of my element here. But yeah, so he finally reaches the point where he introduces the Savior of the world coming to bring to the masses the concepts of truth and unassailable arguments. So that's he does it in a very circuitous and gentle way, I would have to say. And he gives a nice quote from G.K. Chesterton to finish off the chapter that I really like. He said, Chesterton said, God is like the sun. You cannot look at it, but without it, you cannot look at anything else. It's kind of, it's clever, but I mean, come on. As a theist, I love that, right? Atheists will, they'll gnash their teeth at that, of course, but let's listen to that one more time. He says, God is like the sun. You can't look at it, but without it, you can't look at anything else. It's not only clever, it's I don't know, I like that a lot. Good for Chesterton. How does God persuade multisensory man to come to the truth? Let us climb to see the view from above the mist and penetrate its density through the eyes of God. What a great way to finish off the chapter. So yeah, as gentle as a person can be, I have to give credit to Ravi Zacharias for the way he presents the reader with these barriers, which are very difficult barriers. I wouldn't choose those barriers myself. I have 3 barriers that I'm happy to share in a different video. But these 4 that he presents, I never really analyzed them as much as I have through his study here. And so these 4 barriers he presents to the reader, and then in chapter 6 he says, okay, let's try and see if we can get through this misty reality that we're all facing. Both believers and non-believers are faced with these barriers to explaining what our existence is like and what meaning it has and what the future has for us. We all face that. Both believer and non-believer alike face these barriers. And so the author is trying to say, let's see if we can get out of this mist and see if there's any record of profound truth to be found. Lo and behold, a guy came to earth and had some pretty profound truths to share with us, didn't he? And so I'm expecting that will be further explained in detail in chapter 7, which will be our final video. I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much for watching once again. God bless you. And we'll hopefully be able to round it up with one more video on the final chapter, which is going to be called With Larger Eyes Than Ours. And I'm expecting that I know who's got larger eyes than ours. And I bet you know who too. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. God bless you. Spend time with people you love. Enjoy the beautiful weather that we're having. And we'll talk to you again real soon, okay? Take care of yourself. Bye for now.